Hey Staten Island, this is HealthWish, a conversation about the state of healthcare in the fabulous 5th Borough. Our aim is to raise issues, raise awareness, and raise health. Because when we raise health, we raise everyone. In today's episode, HealthWish is joined by two heavyweights in the healthcare space, Staten Island University Hospital Executive Director, Dr. Brahim Ardolic, and Staten Island Borough President, the Honorable James Oddo. Give it a listen.
So I wanted to touch upon something that we don't typically talk about when we talk about health. I think we both agree, and we've talked about this, job creation. At the end of the day, it's been well documented and well studied that the people who are healthier are people that actually have jobs they're happy with and are making over a certain amount of money and can support their families. You know, and I wanted to talk a little bit about job creation, both P-Tech and otherwise. I know you've done a lot of work there. It's a passion of mine, and we're doing a lot of things as well in relation to that. I'm curious your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so we have a unique challenge on Staten Island. I think overwhelmingly we are, and we want to stay a bedroom community. We want to be a bedroom community, 1 and 2 family homes. In certain corridors, we can have sort of higher density residential, but we want a certain quality of life. And having that, and also having jobs where you can work on Staten Island, and that's a challenge. Thank God we have huge employers like SIUH, by the way. But you know, we've prided ourselves on trying to create jobs of all types, and obviously we were really successful on the Amazon front and IKEA and the e-commerce front on the West Shore of Staten Island, which is thousands of jobs. We swung and missed a few times on the tech front, which were trying to establish a beachhead, particularly on the North Shore. We were a little bit premature in that. We're still taking another shot at that with CSI and the lab that they're going to construct on the North Shore. But you mentioned P-Tech, which is, we haven't officially announced, but it's going to be a collaboration with you and with some other partners that I think is going to take Port Richmond High School students and give them opportunities in your institution and beyond that are really good jobs, that they can get entry-level jobs but create a career. And I just think, the pressure of the economics is manifests itself in difficult ways in terms of your health. Again, I talk about my dad working around the clock to provide for his 4 kids. There's no doubt of that connection. So I think you're absolutely on point in bringing this connection up. And so we're trying to create jobs of all stripes. So we just had this really big announcement that we're proud of. Perscolis, who's the best at tech, workforce development, and job placement. They operate in 4 of the 5 boroughs, not Staten Island. And thanks to Isaac Gorodetsky on our staff at Borough Hall and collaborations with the Staten Island Chamber, funded by Amazon, we're bringing them to Staten Island.
It's interesting because I actually think that there's 2 prongs to this. There's the subset of people who I think don't know what a career could look like, right? So, we have real careers available for laboratory technicians, for pathology technicians. These are good paying jobs, and they're very difficult to fill. But it's hard to get a 20-year-old to say, you know what? I could get a really great job. I'm going to go be a laboratory technician, or I'm going to go learn how to be a cytopathologist. These are excellent jobs where you'll always be employed, and yet somehow those thoughts are not getting to the folks that I think would love to have those jobs, and trying to figure out that pathway, which we're actually looking at, bringing in entry-level people into the company and then actually training those people and kind of putting them there, because now they're exposed to healthcare. So we're working on that. And then on the flip side, and this is the thing that has always honestly been something that's been bothersome to me. If you go and look at the number of kids who are involved in the highest level educational programs on Staten Island and the number of them who come back to work on Staten Island, it's just too low. Go look at your tech graduates from 10 or 12 years ago. How many of them currently live and work on Staten Island? And the answer is not enough of them. Go to all these institutes, exceptional programs. Every public high school on Staten Island has one, and a lot of the parochial schools have them. How many of those kids actually come back and live and work on Staten Island? I can tell you, for me personally, I was in the institute in Tottenville High School when I was a kid, And I think something like 5 or 6 of the 60 kids in the Institute still either live or work on Staten Island. The rest of them live and work elsewhere. That's a problem. How do we keep those people here?
Yeah, let's take the first part, because I vividly remember one of our many Zoom calls on P-Tech where you said what you just said about and you named all these different professions, and it left us so excited. Like, I didn't know these professions existed, and I certainly, I don't believe that the students at Port Richmond High School do. And when they learn about it, when you bring them 100%. Into it, I mean, you are transforming lives. That's not hyperbole. So we are on the cusp of doing something really great with the P-Tech program, and you are going to send some young people on Staten Island down these really remarkable paths that right now they don't know exist, and that's really exciting. On the retaining young people, listen, and part of it is housing, and this is the challenge we have. Again, we want to maintain the quality of life, and we fought against the multiple townhouses, which theoretically were the entry level to home ownership, and that opportunity has been taken away. We need some of that higher density housing to keep young people on Staten Island, but we have to do it right. You can't just build it and say infrastructure will come, because we've lived that before. We lived that in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s. Put the housing first, get the critical mass, and then the infrastructure will come, and it didn't. So part of it is the residential component that we haven't, frankly, figured out yet how to do it right, and giving them that chance at living here. But part of it is letting them know about opportunities and creating more opportunities and making sure that we retain them. And I think the P-Tech program is a great step in that direction, because you're putting people on a pipeline that's going to make them want to stay here, because they have a career that's unfolding and they see it ahead of them. And you take some of that uncertainty away.
So, curious. It's been a long time. You've been in government for a while. What do you think your greatest accomplishment is?
When you said I've been in government a long time, you looked at my head. I don't know if you were looking at the gray or the 7 strands that I come over to cover.
No. I've seen
Doc.
it. Yeah.
I'm very proud. I built a great team of people who cared, and we've accomplished a lot. I think if I tell you the one specific thing I'm most proud of, it's probably the creation of the new PS48. It's not like the city said, here's a school, and they drop it into your district, and then you run to the head of the parade and say, hey, I got a school.
It's never like that.
That is the old Doctors Hospital site. The city didn't want to buy it. We got them to buy it, which was good for SIUH. They didn't want to build a school. We got them to build a school, and they didn't want to make the school K-8, and it's now K-8. And I have to tell you, in some tough moments post-Sandy, as that school was built, I purposely went past it to remind myself why I was in this crazy business. That is by far my proudest actual single accomplishment. But I want to answer that question a little differently, and I want to bring it back to my father. My whole adult life has been trying to validate those sacrifices that he made and the sacrifices my mother made. That's what I've been chasing. That's been the motivation. All those days he got up when he was sick, all those days he worked double shift, that impacts you. It stayed with me, and that has been my blessing and my curse. And I think, as I wrap up, can I look back and say, did we live true to that? Did we validate that? And I think I have. And I think that only inures to the benefit of Staten Island. That means that we as a team did a really good job. And I think within that, one of the other things I am most proud of is I was a pretty crappy boss early on, because I was a yeller, and I was really, I was just this maniac workaholic, and I was a micromanager. And when we got to Borough Hall, I realized that part of our job as being a leader is you got to empower people. You got to find the right people, which we did. The Jason Rajewskis, the Jen San Martinos, find them, empower them, and then the younger people behind them. Part of your role as a leader is to grow them. This is not their last job. You got to, and I am really proud of the team, and I'm really proud of the culture that we've built and how young people were given a chance to grow. And I've learned from really good people. I made a ton of mistakes, but I've tried to just to continue to grow and learn from it. And I think ultimately, I think my old man, he's got to be looking down proud, and I think that means I did a good job by the people of Staten Island.
And let me just tell you, I do not believe there's a lot of people in government of any kind, or for that matter, successful people in any other field, that would list their continued willingness to grow as something that they're working on. So honestly, I think that's a testament to who you are, that you actually count that amongst yourself. I truly believe that if you're not trying to get better, then you're just by definition getting worse as a human being and as a team and everything else. So thank you for that, because I think that's really refreshing to see. And I think for young people growing up, if you truly want to have these leadership roles, it always grows with you personally getting better. Because if you're not personally getting better, it's hard for the people around you to get better.
I've sketched out my own little internal algorithm. And if you think about it, if you are a lifelong learner, if you consciously say, I want to get better every day, what flows from that are certain traits that we all want. If you know that you want to learn, you understand that you don't know everything, you're curious, you're open-minded, you're not just staying in your echo chamber like we see across all kinds of platforms, and you have a beginner's mindset, a growth mindset. It forces you to actively and like fiercely listen, which results in empathy. You actually can find joy from that learning, and it gives all the skills that we want in young people and in leaders. It naturally flows from that initial mindset of, from every conversation, from every meeting, I don't have all the answers, and I can learn from it. And instilling that in young people that's the best gift we can teach them. And those are skills. Those are things you can get better at. Lord knows I was not good at them. I always thought, as you were asking me the question, my job was supposed to be preparing my response, even, and I've worked at it. I still fail miserably at it at times, particularly when I'm hypercaffeinated. But it's a great approach to life. And I tell you, the other thing is people suddenly become less boring. If you're really in present and in the moment and listen, you're like, oh, okay. And it becomes much more pleasurable, and every interaction is something you look forward to.
Yeah, I get asked by young people all the time, what does it take to do one of these jobs? And it's interesting because I think the best description of any job is there are these buckets, right? There's buckets that you have to fill and that you have to have knowledge of to be able to do the job. And it's that bucket of, okay, what's the day-to-day operations like of this job? Okay, what's the financial aspects that I have to learn to be able to do this job? What's to this, what's to that? But I always thought that the bucket that gets most underfilled is always the leadership bucket. It's the interactions bucket. It's the teaching how the people below you what is expected of them so they can leave and they can actually go do the next big job. If you're not filling that bucket, people think they're helping themselves by keeping these people and actually not being a true leader. And in actuality, what they're actually doing is hurting themselves because they're not growing themselves to be able to lose people by growing the next person.
Yeah, I love the bucket metaphor and sort of making those deposits in there. And it's a process. I'm a real process-oriented kind of guy. When as a kid it was about preparation. Now it's like I have a process that I try to work, and you get it because you are a really good leader, but you sharing that with other folks. And one of the great lines I came across somewhere along the line is like, leaders don't grow followers, they grow other leaders, and you can see that in your institution. Your institution doesn't run well if you're the only leader, and you get it, and you have it on your team. And I think more people in those positions need to embrace that mindset and need to understand that part of their job is to propel. And I have to say, John Fusco, back in the early 90s, and he was one of the rare politicians who put his staff front and center, and that stayed with me to this day, and we've tried to grow on that approach.
Yeah, so one thing about working with you is everybody gets to know your staff. You put them out in front of you in the best possible way, and it's hard to not get to know who they are, and it's hard to not to get to learn to trust them, and that's really a testament to what you are able to do.
Yeah, I mean they're really talented people, and you know, listen, and I think it leads to enjoying the job. I mean, we have fun. Google, I think it was Google that did the study, and I forget the name of the study, but, you know, sort of psychological safety was the criterion. That was the one thing that they came away with is the most important to a successful team, meaning folks have to know they could come into a room with an idea and they're not going to be embarrassed or yelled at. And so on our team, like, you know, we've had our moments of angst, no doubt, but they are empowered in their own domain to be as creative as possible. It makes the job fun. It makes us do a better job. And I want the world to know who these folks are. And they can describe a lot of our initiatives way better than I did because they're the folks who originated it.
They're actually doing the work.
Yeah, yeah. I'll never forget a time where I was getting yelled at by someone when I worked for John Fusco. And he pulled a rank on me. He said, I don't want to talk to you. I want to talk to Councilman Fusco. And I thought, well, I'm the guy who's doing the work here. So that's like a really bad approach. But yeah, I want the world to know that these folks are really bright and they're the ones who've done it and they could explain it, and they should be the ones front and center on it. And it takes, you know, it's nothing out of, it doesn't harm me. I think to those more enlightened folks, it's a credit to whoever whose name is on the door that you're willing to say, hey, call Jen or call Jason, call Isaac, call Miss Marie, or hey, Miss Marie, explain this. And we've done it in front of His Honor the Mayor, and His Honor the Mayor knows who my chief of staff is and they know Jennifer, they know Dr. Ginny, which sometimes it's impossible not to know Dr. Ginny. They know them, and I think that's great that the mayor of the city of New York could say, hey, Jason, hey, Dr. Ginny, or the health commissioner says, hey, Dr. Ginny, blah, 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 even though I'm sitting at the table and I'm cool with it because that's what's going to get us to the next step in our mutual goal. You know Dr. Ginny, don't you, Doc?
Who? Yes, of course I know. Dr. Mantello is amazing, and she's been an amazing partner with us and the nursing homes and everything else through this whole crisis, and it's on top of everything else she's done with you for the last 8 years. So yeah, it's that's one of the things about your team is you do get to know who the players are in the team and what they do. It's a big part of what you do.
And folks in our world come to realize that sometimes getting to know Jason is not good because Jason is the bad cop when we have to play good cop, bad cop. So some folks who have gotten to know Jason are like, I probably would have been better off if I didn't have the circumstances.
That has not been my experience, for the record, Jason.
Jason is great, and Jason understands the role of chief of staff, you know, and he plays the bad cop better than anyone. I'm not saying he revels in it, but yeah, it's an important part of the job.
And to give you an idea of what the last 2 years have been like and how much interaction there has been, I actually now know what the inside of at least one room of the homes of a lot of the people on this staff actually are like from Zoom calls. You know, I could actually tell you that we were joking around that I like the doors in one of these people's houses because you just spend so much time. This has changed everything that we actually do in the last 2 years.
I wish that we could have made a documentary about the experience, and people could have heard some of the phone calls and you giving me the daily update on the numbers. And by the way, Doc, I have to, again, because I hope Staten Islanders know, but what you did specifically with taking South Beach Psych new building that was brand new, wasn't completed yet, no one was in it, and standing that up, I mean, you showed not only New York City, I mean, New York State, how to get it done. And the fact that government came to Northwell and specifically to SIUH and you and said, we'll get out of the way, you do it. You know, Staten Islanders need to know that story. And it was pretty amazing. It wasn't pretty amazing. It was amazing what you did island-wide, but specifically on that institution.
Yeah, listen, let me say, it's funny that you bring that up because if I'm going to look back at the things that I will most remember, I am incredibly proud of the women and men who actually stood that place up as quickly as they did and honestly took care of essentially the same number of people as were taken care of in Javits, with a lot more people involved. It was a small group of extremely dedicated people, which is probably why it got up and running as quickly as it did. and then some amazing clinicians who got that thing up and running. And listen, yeah, we pulled the trigger on certain things, but that group, they put that together. And they wound up taking care of, essentially, give or take 50 patients, what was taken care of in Javits. And that's an amazing thing. And I can tell you definitively, especially for second wave, if we hadn't had that, there is no question that there would have been people on Staten Island, they wouldn't have gotten biopsies, wouldn't have gotten documented with cardiac disease because we would have had to cut certain services. So that was instrumental in saving people's lives, there's no question.
And I have to take this opportunity, Doc, I hope you don't mind, but I want to repeat what I said at the event you had at the South Side a few weeks back in 100th anniversary. I just want to say again to all the nurses, both at South and North, who we had a rough moment early on in this when the sort of tweet that I did, I think was really misinterpreted by some, and then it went viral as I wasn't respecting them. I've said it multiple times in reference to my father, long before COVID. I have nothing but the deepest respect and affinity for all of the nurses in your institution, and I thank them. And that was a rough moment when it started to go viral a little bit, and folks are like, "Is he disrespecting us?" And it was nothing of the sort. So if they're watching, in all seriousness, thank you for everything you've done during COVID, but long before that for my family and so many others on Staten Island.
Yeah, we've had this conversation. I think so many things got misconstrued during that period. I think anyone who's seen you interact with nursing staff at SIUH, anyone who's seen how you interact with them would never think that you really believe that. So I thank you for saying it again, but I have discussed this with several nurses, and I think the point was made. It was a rough time. Yeah. It was a very rough time.
Yeah.
And that's where we'll pick up next time as the conversation turns to food insecurity. HealthWish wishes to thank our very special guests, James S. Oddo, Borough President of Staten Island, and Dr. Brahim Ardolic, Executive Director of Staten Island University Hospital. We're very interested in your health wish. Contact us at healthwish@northwell.edu. Thanks for joining us. We hope to see you again soon.